Okay, I think we can start. Laurie is here, Hannah is there, and Brad, you are there. So it's just four of us for now, but the time is up, so we can actually start with the formal, uh, formal running of the um, slides. That's how we're going to start. Just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from or what your instructor is about. My core background is technology, and I've worked intensively on the algorithms or search algorithms. Um, and I have written the book on the subject for which you are enrolled, which is CIRS. The books that you would be learning through, or the main training guide that is called Training Guide for CIRS 5.0.1. I wrote the guide, so basically pretty much be able to deliver uh, more of the the technicalities which are running the internet, so that the students have a better understanding of how the search um, gets done and what are some of the ways in which the technology is playing a part in delivering those web pages in your browser. So here is Tristan. So let's get Tristan in. I think we will have students joining us. It's the first day of the first lesson. So there might be, a little bit of delay. Um, yeah, we'll give some room to others to join in as well. So I'll keep adding them, and I'll keep giving more on, the introduction. So basically I guess one of the things that I'd like to do is to get an introduction from those that have joined in, and to get an understanding or a background of where they're coming from. If you can just give me a little bit about yourself, I guess the basic question is your motivation to join us, or for you to take this class, how useful this is going to be in your profession or whatever your objectives are for taking this course. So if I can start with Brad, just so that, and by the way, the recording has started, so and I'll always let you know when the recording button is pressed. So right now I've turned it on. And if you would like, you can give me a little bit of background of your profession, and I guess why you've joined the
Well,
course.
no, I don't want to give any background much on myself, but I just say that I joined the course because I want to learn more about internet research.
Mhm. Okay. And Laurie, how about you?
Yes, my husband and I run a couple of businesses, and like Brad, I just want to learn more.
Okay. And Hannah?
Really just curiosity. Has nothing to do with my profession. It's just something that I enjoy doing. So I wanted to learn more.
Okay. And Tristan? You there? Okay. So anyway, so let's get started. First of all, I've got some messages. Sorry, no mic. Okay, never mind. With the slide that you're looking at right now, it is giving us a sort of an idea of infrastructure, which is concisely, um, I guess, presented. It's not as detailed, so you don't need a lot of technical knowledge. But what is important is to understand how the web pages are accessed, and some of the terms or some of the, I guess, some of the components of a network that makes the internet. That is what we are going to just learn with these slides. So very briefly and very quickly, I'm going to give you these different scenarios, which are actually labeled as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I would run the slide now. Now, in this one, there are two types of applications, which is what is um, differentiated between 2 and 3. So if we are talking about web applications, we are focused on the type of software or anything that is running the program inside of a browser. So browser is what connects or what brings those pages to display on your screen. And those are what we call web applications. Web applications can be anything that you download, anything you run as subscription on your browsers, but basically it works with connectivity through the internet to the main servers in the network or in the internet environment. So those are web applications. Browser is basically a program that is bringing the pages for display. So any web application that you would be running um, on your machine as web application will have to have a browser environment, and you can use any kind of browser to display that. It could be a Google Chrome, it could be Yandex, it could be Baidu, it could be Yahoo, or any browser that is preferable. Bing is another one. Whereas the local applications are not really connected with the internet, and they will work independently and work on local machines as a local application, which is driven by the software and the hardware on your hard drive, and therefore it is not considered web application. So we'll be mainly dealing with web applications, which includes the browser. Now, the connectivity, as you can see, there are two. In fact, there are three environments, I'd say 4, 5, and 6. One is the one that is number 4 right here is a bandwidth provider or someone who is giving you connectivity to the internet. So those could be big infrastructure ownerships like with AT&T, for instance. Bell is another one. So that is basically responsible for connectivity and not necessarily providing you the main um, internet services. It is basically bandwidth provider. So the internet service is an infrastructure which is actually can be divided into two parts. One is what we call ISPs, or internet service providers. And then the other environment is the internet itself, which is shown in number 6 right here. What 6 is presenting are the bunch of data centers or the places where the servers of companies like Google, for instance, they own this infrastructure, which together or which is a combination of data centers that contains those servers that actually deliver those web pages or are the repositories of web pages collected. Whereas the ISPs are the service providers that are responsible for hosting websites and provide other additional services like they can vary from just giving you the servers to host a site to where you can actually get email addresses and run your other applications that are not managed internally by the businesses, but basically outsourced to the ISPs to use their servers and their technology and their system engineers to manage those applications or web pages or web sites. So the ISPs are separate from the data centers of environments like Google. But when we talk about Google environment, we are basically giving or connecting a certain type of I guess you can just call it a specific web browser like Chrome, for instance, will connect to the Google data centers. And similarly, Bing has an environment of internet servers, which is exactly similar to Google, except that Google is much larger and it has a lot many data centers when you compare it with Microsoft Bing. So for the IE or Internet Explorer to connect, they would be connecting to the Microsoft Bing or Microsoft environment and not Google. So Chrome is basically just a connectivity between the browser, which is proprietary to Google, Google Incorporated, and the data centers it has all across the globe. So this is simply just giving you a concept of how these different environments play part in delivering or collecting the web pages. Now, what the data center is doing here is that it is constantly communicating with web servers in ISP environments or wherever the websites are hosted. And it is probing or collecting those pages and bringing them back into their own repositories within the data centers. So this is a constant process, and it is very rapid, and it is trying to update its repositories of latest or freshest pages or new websites that come in contact with something called robots or bots, we call them, or sometimes we call them spiders, which are small programs that keep hitting those websites and web pages attached to those websites or domains and keeps collecting it into its repository. So once this repository is actually updated, or anytime this someone is looking for a web page through the search that they're doing in the address bar of a web browser, it is actually collecting those collected pages or previously deposited pages in the data centers or data center servers. Okay. Now, what the robots or these bots are doing is shown here as if A is a web browser, let's say, and you put in an address shown in this address bar right here. Whenever you are trying to look for the page, let's say this page is actually about AOFIRS, for instance. This is the topic, or this is the name of the page, for instance, which is what is shown at the very end of a URL. So URL or the web address carries the name of the file itself towards the very end of it, which means after the last backslash. This is shown here as about AOFIRS, as if this is the name of the page it is trying to call from a website called airsassociation.org. So once you are looking, or when you hit the search with these with this link, it is going to look for the page about AOFIRS, and where it's going to look for it is in the data centers. Now, in the data centers, you could see that it's not showing the pages itself, but it is showing these little bugs, which is just representing what we call spiders or bots or crawlers. So whenever these pages are to be looked for or searched inside the repository of a data center, they have to be collected first. When these robots are going and fetching it every single time. It is doing it. It is programmed in such a way that it would just crawl into the domain first of, let's say, any website. In this case, let's say it's airsassociation.org. Then it is going to look for the what we call the site map. That is the map of all those pages that are connected with that domain, or are the ones that make the entire website um, as one big collection of web pages. So it is going into the domain, then breaking it into different web pages and look for all those pages that are changed or new or something which they don't have in their data center from before. Those are the ones that it is able to look for and fetch them to add to what they already have for that domain. So this is a constant process. We are not dealing with the how the links are set or what makes the links or how we read the links yet. So we'll just leave it at this for now, and we'll just move on. Later we'll be we'll be um, talking about how to interpret or how to read the links, which can be simple or can be even complex. So that part is going to come later. So for now, it's just the boats, robots, or crawlers is what we want to mention. That's we're not going to do this one. This one is going to come later. So some of the slides will be reshuffled. I am going to go through what I think needs to be covered first, and then we're not just going to leave out some of the slides, but we will come back to them as I feel that it's the right time to do it. So for now, I'm going to talk about the two types of databases. One that we are used to as no, as we have used them before, or you could say that we are familiar with, or some of you are, who has a bit of a technology background, you would understand the database or relational database systems or standard databases, which are actually used in library environment. But to compare the standard database with how they are set in the internet environment, or the how the repositories of pages are named, or ways in which it can be differentiated from the typical database, is an important knowledge which will come in handy later on when we are using the search queries. So differentiation or similarities is what we are going to discuss next. Okay. In a typical RDBMS or Relational Database Management System, just going to give you a simplified organization of how RDBMS works, or what is typical database. In a typical database, you could see that you can actually connect some of the variables, which in this case could be student ID or student name, by navigating through the subclasses of the main data, and it would just start to create a thread, or it'll communicate or become relational to each other as you progressively search for more details. So for students ID, you can actually click on it and select a course. And in the course, it could be either non-degree or degree course. So if you would select non-degree, it could be a certificate, and it could be enrollment, which is where it is, subsequently or consecutively, it is becoming more granular, and it is taking you to a deeper search as you make your choices. So this is a typical database, which is what is still commonly used. Excel sheet, for instance, could be another kind of a database, but not talking about the relational database. But let's assume that columns and rows is what makes a typical BMS system. So, except that each of those blocks or each of those containers of data are relational, or they have some sort of um, bearing on each other because they're connected in such a way. But let's look at how the um, search engine database, we also call it a textual database, how that textual database is different. In textual database, or the database which is being queried when we search something in the internet environment, or in the on the server side of web pages, is actually searched through what we call indexing system. Indexing is basically just the term itself means an organization of variables. Variables, I'm talking about data units. Data units could be anything from numbers to alphabets to words. But typically in the textual database, each of those words that are part of the content on those web pages is considered a single data unit. However, with a bit of a twist, that it has an artificial intelligence built into it, which we call lexical intelligence. That is to do with not just only single word, but its relationship with other words that are either next to it or are somewhat part of the para or the longer sentences, except that the language part or the linguistic science makes it more profound in terms of interpreting it into a language, and then using those words or combination of words as relational words, and with a sense given to it through AI of lexical intelligence. We call that semantics. So those are some of the wordings that we'll keep using. Semantics, you now know what that means. It's just a relationship of words and meaning it gives to those words when they're together, or in a situation of longer sentences. It could be linguistically correct or incorrect, or linguistically making sense or not in a certain language. So that's what makes it more, I guess, in one way, it is more complex database. In the other sense, you could say that it has a bit of an intelligence to give a meaning to the sequence of words. So that has that additional sense given to it. And therefore, it is sometimes considered to be more proficient or more efficient way of looking for content, especially the textual content. And that's how it is designed. So if we look at this slide, you could see that these are just giving you example of, say, index pages or content pages. Now, content pages concept means whenever we are saying content pages in terms of internet or in terms of indexing system of the internet or the search engine, we are talking about the HTML pages, or those pages that make the website, or which is attached to the single domain of that website as if it is the subunits of the main domain. So all of those web pages that are programmed in a language called HTML, so it becomes visible to the users, that HTML pages has within them content which is textual in nature. So whenever we are doing Google search specific to the keywords or search terms, it is looking for those embedded content or embedded text inside of those HTML pages. That's what is indexed, basically, those HTML pages. Now, in the web index, for instance, we have this content. A small example is these words that are actually in the bold fonts. Market research, for instance, if you search for market research, it's going to look for that content in the document and try to match market and research together. And then the other words could be target markets, for example. So these individual words like market itself, when separated from the word research, is a single data unit, or it is comparable to, let's say, one of these variables, which could be a course, non-degree, degree, whatever. These are, they are not as detailed, or it does not have to give a meaning in the linguistic way. But when you compare it with what we have on this document, the word market itself is a single unit. But because you've searched market and research together, assuming or market is the first word, which is followed by the word research, the search engine would have a sense to understand, or would think of it as two words together. So it is going to look for anything that has these two words in those documents to have that or to deliver that page back to you. So individually, market is a single unit. Together, market research can be construed as, or can be considered from the linguistic or from the semantics perspective. Together can also be considered as a single unit or single variable. It just depends on how you have placed your query. So that's just to give you a little bit of a differentiator. Now, in the search engine results, when you look at your SERPs, or search engine return pages, you could see that each of those returned, I guess you can call it snippets. We call it snippets, but you can call it individual results. And there could be so many of them, and each result has these components. And when you look at the components of individual results of those searches, you could see that they have components, or different, they can be differentiated into three zones, or three different parts. There is one part we call URL, which is a link. You can call it a link or URL. It's the same thing for now. From the technology perspective, it could be slightly different. However, we don't want to get to that right now, but assuming we call it a URL, URL part is shown somewhat like this in your results at the top. Under this, there is a bolder statement, or less words, but they are more prominent. This is what we call title of the page. And here you could see the title says market research. The third layer, which is more detailed and has many words to it, this area in gray fonts with some of these wordings that are highlighted or they're bolded, and marking that market research, for instance, is what you have actually inserted as part of your key terms or search words. Those are highlighted. So anything that is coming under the title part, we call description. This is a standard wordings we use, or this is how we componentize, or we want to look at the results. But as someone who is a professional researcher and would like to interpret what goes, or what could be the utilization or the significance of these individual components, there could be several ways in which you can interpret them. Individually, for instance, we are going to tackle how we're going to interpret the URL itself to get a better understanding, or to get a cue, or somewhat be able to know before even clicking on it where it's going to take us. So it is going to give us an address, and few of the I guess wordings that make or are part of this length of this URL will have a significance of its own, and we learn about how to interpret it. Second layer, which is market research, for instance, the title part. This could be the page title, and where this information is coming from or what is the significance of this is another matter, which means that this is actually marking in concise way or giving the name of the page or how the page title is placed inside of those web pages, and what the significance of title is as far as understanding or figuring out what this page is about. So this is concise information, less words, but in the title portion of the page, which means that it is more on the general side or giving you a wider perspective of what the page or the site is about, but not as detailed as the next component, which is the description part. In the description, we get a lot more information. We get more details. There are a lot of ways in which these description areas are set by Google. And we are more specific to Google. I'm not going to discuss Bing and others, so that, but more or less you can assume that whatever we learn about Google would have similarity up to about 95% of how other web page or the other environments like Bing or Yahoo or Baidu and others, how they are similar with each other. So not a huge difference. If there is a marked difference or something very significant, I would explain it or when it comes to it. However, what I was getting to or trying to make you aware of is that in the description portion, description can be written in many different ways and formats. We are going to also look at those formats. The real estate or the area which is covered by these snippets is limited. So there is only so much information that can be presented. But the idea for us to get a sense or make a sense out of all any of these or one of these will depend on how much of depth of knowledge you have about what this page is going to lead you to, or whether or not to click on it. That is what we are going to get to by getting more understanding of, let's say, in the case of description, of how different descriptions are set. So that's the reason why we are showing this, is just for you to know that there is more to what these components are going to tell you. There is a story behind individual types of components. That's the snippet, by the way. The entire 3 components together is what we call snippets. Here is a differentiator. I think it is just a repeat of the same. So not to make it look too complex, here is a RDBMS shown as an example, as an illustration. And on the left-hand side, there is this semantics or textual database. Now, without worrying too much about how these are differentiated, just look at the process, excuse me, process involved in textual database versus relational database. In the textual database, you could see that, let's suppose that there are these documents 1, 2, and 3. And the title of the document, for instance, the first case is annual budget, the second company background, and so on. Now, these are what we call source documents or HTML pages, or something that has the HTML code which embeds the content, except that one of the components of the HTML pages, like in the source document, is named annual budget. The other document is company background, and so on. So assuming that some results, depending whichever keyword you have used, but assuming that the snippet comes out and one of the results in the snippet has in the title portion the word annual budget, then what annual budget indicates in that snippet is that that is the title of the page. It is not as detailed or more elaborate on matching, many keywords that could be part of your search, except that in the simplest way or in the simplest format of two words together that indicates the title somewhat matching your keywords, as if you have written annual budgets together, that would bring you the snippet with the title that says annual budget. And important on this is the part where you would be looking at the intelligence of, or the textual intelligence or the semantics in somehow embedded, or those algorithms which are programmed to match certain words, or there is a dictionary of words, there is a combination of different words together that makes it lexically inclined to interpret or to make sense linguistically for the combination of words. Now that is running parallel or running at the same time, meaning that when we actually start to look at the algorithms of how the search engine is running or looking for matching words, it is in fact uh, doing a different, or it is actually got at least 200 plus algorithms running at the same time. So it is simultaneous process, and each algorithm has an intelligence built into it as if it is separate from another algorithm, yet they somehow coexist to give you a better user experience. Like certain algorithms are only going to do the spell checks. The other algorithms are going to look at the combination of words. Then there'll be others which will be looking at MPEG files or other multimedia files. So all of those algorithms are simultaneously working together in cooperation, but not necessarily performing the exact same function. So they can be, a lot of complexities. This is the simplest version of how the pages are set or indexed. On the right hand side, I'm only going to explain you enough that because I know many of you are not coming from technology background, so without worrying too much about it or thinking that you have to read a lot more, just uh, pay attention to whatever is being discussed, as if this is more important than going through the more deeper layers of understanding of this in depth. There is no need for that. So that's where I'm going to caution you, because the course itself is not on technology. It is basically on expertise and methodologies of how to improve your search when you're using the web browsers. So that's where we're going to focus. On the traditional RDBMS side, I guess it is, columns and rows, which is what makes the RDBMS. These are the tables, these are data fields, these are single records. There is rows and columns, and each of these are relational to each other, which means if there is an ID number here, then each of these A, B, C, D, and E rows are actually marked or are given a data field name or a data name. So A table has a data field ID number, and each of these ID numbers, for instance, like 1019 or whatever is boxed as 1019, is called a single record, or a record that can call everything that is next to it. So if I, let's say, look for record 1020, it is going to bring me details of the name, the gender, the location, and the course. So these are all not only relational, but they make sort of a thread, which is what makes it easier to find something, but it is not as complex and it's not as elaborate and not as efficient as the textual database. So that's just about enough information we have to worry about. We will, just so you know, that we generally go for a short break. That would be about 10 minutes. So we'll get to that in about, I guess, next 5 minutes or so. And then after you return, we will be, that's about the only break that I'd like to give. And after that, I just want to finish the session, which is going to cover the next half. Okay. But there is no fixed time. So depending on if I'm in the flow of delivering something which needs to be finished, then I will stick to that and get that done before we can go to break. And, sometimes you could say that it is a lot of information in a very short time, and you may have questions that you would like to ask. So what I would suggest is that if it's a quick question that we can put in a chat box, please feel free to do that. And I would then look at the chat and then get back to the question and give you the answer as soon as I have a little bit of time gap in between, what we are discussing. And also after the break, if you have questions or during the break, you have something that you want to put in the chat box, please do that. If I ask you to let me know if you're following the lecture, or if there is a question you need to ask, then please, you can do that and you can open your mic. And especially if it's a question that needs to be shared for the benefit of everybody, then we can also tackle it that way, through the mic. So far, everything is going well. I'm going to ask these questions, especially at this time when we are starting these lectures. We're trying to get in the flow of things, and perhaps it's a good idea to measure the pace of delivery of information, or if there is anything that you're not understanding or I'm skipping, you're free to let me know, and we can basically fine tune the delivery of lectures. Thank you, Laurie. Okay, the next thing is the HTML. I think when I start with this lecture, which is a separate segment actually, which might require for you to gulp some coffee or have something that'll wake you guys up. So let's take a quick break right now. Give it 10 minutes, and then we'll get started with something to do with HTML and web pages, the content search. So this is more interesting and not only detailed, but it is very important as the basis on which we are going to build our search query methods and methodologies. This is also important because it is something that I believe a lot of you might find very new, or something that may require for you to ask questions. So for that reason, I feel that I'm going to slow down my pace a little bit, and I'm going to keep asking if you are getting that or understanding it, so that there is, I don't want you to just, not understand and we just carry on and go forward, because everything that is going to come next, especially for the next few classes, will depend on the concept you have developed on this web page, understanding HTML and web page content. So let's just get back in about 10 minutes. I'll call it a break for now. I'll see you shortly. Okay. Okay, everyone, welcome back. We will get to the next segment for lecture. And I hope you can hear me and you can see my screen. Just give me a nod. If all is good, we can proceed. Excellent. Okay, so let's look at the slide here, which is what I'm going to focus on to give you a bit of a concept on how the web pages are set. Or to begin with, um, let's look at how the snippets are formed, or how the or what information is collected from the page that is brought to those snippets. So let's run this one and see what it is about. So on the left-hand side, on A, you could see that we have a snippet, which is giving us a link, a title, and the description part. Now, where is this information coming from? Now, how the web pages are set, or how the individual web page is displayed, is actually mm, a result of the HTML program that is making that page appear as you see it as a user. So whatever the user is looking at is not all the time exactly the same information that is embedded in the code or what is running behind it. That code is what we call the HTML coding system. And the HTML is the type of language which is specifically designed for displaying those pages you get to see. Some of the information which is hidden or that is not necessarily displayed for the user is also read by the search engine. In effect, what the search engine does is that with each query that you are inserting in your search box, it is reading the code. It is not reading the page as it is displayed. So some information that is not seen by the user can also be extracted only if you have enough knowledge to know what other important informations like date and time stamp, for example, um, some of the dates where the information is uploaded that are not necessarily displayed. um, Sometimes the author is not displayed, the keywords are not displayed, but they are read by the search engine, and at the time of indexing it is actually extracting that information and keeping it as separate data sets that can be queried only if you know how to construct that specific query, which can do a deeper search and extract even that info, which otherwise you can't see on the page. All right. So that is just the reason why we have to learn a little bit about the page, about HTML. Second reason is that you may be able to find certain type of uh, textual data by opening up the source code. And then, especially when you are doing electronic evidence collections, you may be able to find that info and just by opening the source code. First of all, let's see where link, title, and description are pulled from. Because on the right-hand side, this is actually the coding side, or what is shown here on this page that is being displayed right here. You can see my cursor moving it. This page is actually displayed because of the HTML that is running behind it. A part of it is extracted so that we can tell you where the link is coming and in the snippet, and where the title information is coming from. So let me do another click. Now, at the time of indexing, the search engine has already figured out the main link that is attached to this web page that is being displayed. So it is actually embedded in the code, but in the coding system, as you will see that the placement of this information, like this link itself, is attributed to, or it is corresponding to a name given to this specific type of info. In the case of URL, it is called base href. For instance, this is every single time the link that you get to see on top is being extracted from base href. Then the second page, the second information set, which is the title part, is actually coming from the tag or the, you know, just for making it easy for you to, we are not going to be teaching HTML. So don't get that notion that you have to learn HTML. What we are interested in is certain tags or labels. Labels and tags are same thing. Basically, tag is the description of what is embedded or what is considered as the textual part, which is attributed to or which corresponds to a name called title, or the tag itself is called a title tag. You could see how the title tag starts. It starts with greater than, less than sign, and in between it says title. And where the information ends is enclosed or is considered terminated as a full sentence, which is Association of Internet Research Specialists AOFIRS here, by giving it a backslash. So anything that is placed inside of these tags, which is opening and closing, and in between textual information, that is what we are interested in. And to know where the information like title of that page is extracted, we will just focus on the title tag. So here, the next portion of the snippet, the title portion, is extracted from the title tag. Similarly, the description portion is actually in the tag called description. Okay. It says meta name description. We call it a description tag. It it's got in between from where it starts to where it ends, right here with the backslash and the greater than sign. Whatever the textual information is here, because it is given a name description, that's where the description portion is extracted or brought to the snippet portion. So these components are actually pulled by the search engine by matching it with your key terms and trying to see if the link, the description, and title somehow has a coordinated effect to give it a solution or give it a set of information that connects with each other and has certain keywords which are matching both in, I guess, in all three components: link, description, and title portion. So that's why we say that the snippet part has got three components, which are the main components. And these main components, sometimes we call them meta tags. Meta means that it is the top layer information or the information about the page. Home page usually is the main information page, and it has certain ways of how the search is going to only look for them in these tags. Okay, so let's see how the page tags are separated or they're differentiated. Now, assuming that this is one big page or a typical web page, and I don't know if, okay, it's a kind of jumpy, hold on, let me get back to it. So basically a typical web page is what is shown here, and we are just generalizing it. The web page itself has got three different portions. The one on the top we call the header portion. This is where you see the logo, you see the top level links. typically, and there could be more information, but this is the simplest way of expressing how the page is separated. So the header portion normally, I don't know if you observed, it remains the same. It hardly changes. When you keep navigating from one page to another, the header remains intact. Whereas the second part, which is what we call the stomach of it, or we call it body of text, or the middle portion, which is what is marked by this parenthesis, this red one right here, this line. The middle portion is what contains a bulk of the information, or has different types of information, or the detailed content is in the middle portion. And this middle portion keeps changing mostly. The third component is the footer part. This also a lot of times remains constant. It is kind of a fixed information. In a way, the demarcation of a header and the footer has the portion in the middle, which is what is most important for the content, or more detailed content is inside of it, like main captions or the main headings, the subheadings to the main headings, images, etc. And then there is these paras, or these further navigations that you can click on, or other buttons which are hovering buttons, which is kind of a hyperlink, and you can click on it. So all of these are contained in the middle portion. It also includes documents. Sometimes the PDF documents are listed here with the title, where it says PDF document 1, it could have a title, or it has certain textual content which expresses, or which gives details of the type of document that is actually can be further navigated. There are images, there are video clips, there could be multimedia files. So a lot of action in the middle part. Okay. And this we call body of text. Why we componentize it is because when we are running search queries, you would find that certain operators can only be used to find information that is embedded in the header portion. Other types could be used to just specifically query what is in the middle portion. So if you want to look for something like title of something which is short description of what the page is about, you may use, and I'm just giving you an example. We are not there yet, but giving you an example, like there is an operator called in title, or the title colon, in title colon, or all in title colon. Those are the type of operators that would function specifically uh, for matching information contained in the header portion. Okay. The in-text, for instance, which is used for deeper queries, that would be used for querying any of the content that needs a matching word in the body of text in the middle portion, and so on. For the sake of in-text, which is a deeper query, the footer portion is not differentiated. However, the header and the text, body of text plus the footer is differentiated. So in the sense of how in-text would work, the footer would also be the type of information that generally includes links or wordings that are in the links, because you see mostly in the footer side, you see more of the links of different navigations within the page, or it could be information about your digital footprint for social media, etc. So for that reason, in text would not differentiate between header, would differentiate only between header and the body of text and the footer. However, the footer and the body of text is considered the same for doing your search queries with in-text. Now we are, again, I don't want to repeat this, but I don't want you to be confused about the operators yet. Just get the concept of how the pages are separated, and the reason of explaining it, the third reason that I'm explaining these different portions is for you to get an understanding of what type of HTML tags reside, or what is the nature of the tags that contain textual information for header portion versus the rest of the body of text, including the footer. So this is the main reason. Now, in the sense of how the let me just before I get to this, let me show you this part. Now, in the header part, for example, the code that is running or the HTML that is running usually carries meta information, or it matches the type of text that is embedded in the meta title. Remember, I showed you the title tag. So title tag is something that is running behind the header portion, meaning that if you do in title search, it is going to look for the title or match words within the title or the meta title portion of the pages, which basically is running which is responsible for running the header part. The URL, the in URL would also look for the matching words inside of the URL in the header portion. However, the description tag, for instance, which is more detailed information about the page, or which is matching your words and highlighting them in the description portion, are going to be queried through in-text or in-text colon operator. And the in-text operator also would be responsible for finding the deeper textual portion inside of the body of text, which is all this area. And the type of tags that it is going to think of or consider relevant enough that it would match the words are listed in this box. But let me make it even more easier for you to understand what it means with the understanding of the tags, which is best represented with this diagram here. So let's suppose it is the header part and you're doing in title. Okay. The type of tags that are shown behind this blue vertical line on the right hand side, these are the tags in bold fonts like meta name, title, body, link, header. All of these are the tags which are going to have information or the text inside of these that is matched with the in title colon. And this information is actually running behind the header part. In other sense, it is actually doing a meta search or the basic search of very specific wordings that gives a title or is responsible for telling the user that this is what this site is about, or it is the meta or the higher level information and not as granular and not in depth. Whereas when you're doing in text colon, you are looking at tags which are behind this red line, and these are listed here as H1, H2, H3, IMG. And let me explain it. You don't have to learn the tag names, but you have to just understand what could be the limitations of using certain operators that would specifically search for certain for the matching words within the componentized area of a page and would not go beyond it. So it is kind of a restrictor as well. So that's the idea behind understanding why we are talking about these tags. Next, when we are talking about in-text or deeper search, the H1 tag, for example, is telling or is placing or giving meaning rather to the headings of those pages, which means H1 means that it is the higher level or the main caption on the page inside of the body of text, which is the main heading. H2 is the subheading to the main heading H1, and H3 is a subheading, or it is more like, it is diminishing, or it is making these tags appear to the search as having relevance, because these are headings and different levels of heading in different layers, from the main to the sub and the sub, with the descending numbers, as you could see that H6 could be the smallest heading. So these are considered the tags or pieces of information inside of these tags that at the time of indexing, the search engine would put separate as having more relevance than the paragraphs or the deeper text. The second layer that it is going to look for is other sort of tags like image, for example. If you're doing image search, it would look into IMG. If it is even more deeper, a paragraph level of search, which is, longer sentences or wordings in different paragraphs in the deeper layers of those text, it would look into the P tags. Source, if you want to see where that information originally is coming from, you can query that, and you can use, or you can assume that the search engine, or at the time of indexing, it has the ability to separate some information about the source of where that information is coming from, like audio, video. So that source, and a lot of times this information is hidden and cannot be found otherwise without you getting into the code and looking it up, or doing another kind of search query, which will depend on your choice of operators that we eventually will be using to get into the source. Then there is tags like strong, for example. Strong means that it is more emphasized fonts. It has a way of understanding that anything that is emphasized or is in bold has got more significance, more relevance, and therefore it is also separated as having more priority of matching those words. Time and date stamp, the video, and so on. So these are the tags which you don't necessarily have to know what they are for, just to understand that for doing deeper searches, certain information is given more priority for matching reasons, only because it is labeled or it has got a tag name which has got a relevance or a higher level of relevance for the search matching word. So you can consider these as advantages, or you can consider this to be biased from the search perspective, because at the time of indexing, the search engine may have given higher weightage or higher relevance for whatever is held inside of these tags. I hope this is not as complex as some of you might perceive, or if there is anything that I can explain further, please let me know now. But from the conceptual perspective, if you got a sense of what I'm trying to explain, if I can get a nod or something coming from any one of you that tells me that you understand it enough, get the concepts.
Yeah, I'm
Anyone,
okay.
Lord, you're
I'm
okay?
okay. So I'm okay so far. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank
Yes,
you.
I'm good as well.
Thank you for letting me know. Now that I'm at ease with having explained this, I think we can move a little bit more uh, faster. There are a few slides that I am looking at, and they are just more of the same, you know. So if you had an understanding from before, it could be an additional, or it is just a reinforcement of the same information. So that's the reason I ask if you got the concept. We may not have to, spend more time on some of these, which may not be as necessary. Okay. Okay, the header tags, for instance, what is the relevance of title tag? We know where, the title portion of the snippet brings that information to us. But what is the limitations or the advantage of querying something within the title tag? I wonder. Kind of thinking maybe it is, if we can jog our mind a little bit to see what could be the relevance. I would say that if you are looking for the concept on a subject or something which could be a typical title statement, meaning that it is a brief, concise way of expressing what type of topic or what is the nature of your search, without being very specific or very detailed. Perhaps you want to query the title part, right, of those pages. So you can get perhaps a lot many results with the title information, not something very elaborate. Like you're not looking for you know two longer sentences or something that has to do with searching an excerpt from a book with longer sentences. That couldn't be part of the title. So if I have to do that kind of search, I would rather not do in title. If it is something very specific, even for words like 1099. So if you're looking for a form 1099 for IRS, you would just put, 1099 and you put the word help, for example. Or if you're using a subject and then you want to put FAQ or frequently asked questions, maybe that could be a part of the title and you can still use in title, and more than likely the page you will land onto would have in the title tag the wording FAQ or help and the word 1099. So that kind of is could be part of the title and makes sense to use it in the in title column. You wouldn't want to use it in text for deeper searches because the subject itself is more concise and it's to the point. So that is the advantage of using in title to search only in the title portion. Um, okay. And if you're doing in URL search, now in URL is more complex than it looks. It seems that it is a very short statement of, the length of the URL would not have as many words as you would otherwise have for, longer searches or the longer use of words, but only few words that makes into the URL. That is sufficient. But what is the significance of querying something using, let's say, an operator called in URL or all in URL? So never mind all in URL, we don't have to, keep saying all in URL and in URL. Let's say in URL. So if you have to do URL searches, what could be the significance or what could be the relevance of finding something as words inside the entire length of a URL? Whenever we are doing in URL searches, what it's doing or it's supposed to do is look for the words inside of the entire length of the URL. Meaning that if we do in URL colon, we say AIRS association, or we say CIRS benefits or CIRS certification benefits using in URL as our main operator. What is it going to do? It's going to only look for or be specific to finding those words wherever they stand or wherever they are within the entire length of the URL. All right. So URL is got a significance of doing searches when you want to look for a very specific page that has an address of um, of finding that information directly, or finding a link that would take you exactly to that same page. So it is kind of a shortcut when you're doing in URL. It is just going to query and look for the links rather than look for the words in other portions, or finding it as in other components of the snippet. So it is only specifically querying words in the URL. The significance of it or why it is most important. I do in URL searches more often than I do all in title or in title versus in text. Everything else would not matter as much as in URL when I know that I'm want to get to a page directly, which has to do with, let's say, sources or specific sources like blogs, like forums, like news, like what do you call? I guess whatever the source that I'm interested in for me to get to that information, I would be able to find it specifically by using in URL. And I'll give you the reason why. That's just to give you that sense of why it is important, but how it is important is what we will discuss after we have learned more about the components of a URL or how individual backslashes are basically directing your search or making you go to that specific page. So we'll get to that. But importance is that it can get you to a source from where you want to get that information. Okay. So that's as much as we would cover for the URL for now, but hang on to that thought because we'll get to it. It is actually the course itself is not only going to take you to, learning how to put the queries together, but it's going to give you enough knowledge that you would have a sense or have the ability to make best choices or to apply best practices in creating those search queries. Okay. Now, same way, if we have to deal with in-text, for instance, um, and by the way, I just recall the typical questions I get from students at, different levels of how as we cover progressively the portions of the course, we get certain questions and I can sort of relate to it and I can give you a bit of foresight. Okay, so based on that, um, I have students asking me at this point, are we going to do booleans like or you know the plus minuses and so on. We will definitely cover that, except that the technology part, which is our module 1, it covers quite a bit on the web pages or the construction of web pages. So in order for me to explain it better, I'm actually um, relating it with the or explaining it with the advanced operators as examples, because this is the reason, or advanced operators application is the reason why we are doing web pages. So don't think that we will not get to the Boolean. We start with basic operators. That's when we will be covering the Boolean operators. And for now, we're little ahead, um, dealing with or just giving examples with advanced operators. So it just struck my mind that I do get questions at this point is how come we are not doing those, but that's going to come soon. Now, there are a few slides within this course that are specifically inserted in there because of the exam questions. For instance, there is a little bit of a theoretical part where, I guess the examiners would feel more comfortable that you get the concept cleared up a little bit by reading through certain, I guess, certain contents like the one that I'm showing you right now. What could be the question in this case is that what is the utilization or what is the significance of HTML of understanding the language? the search engine understands, like HTML significance, for instance, generally speaking. So these are some of the, I guess, theoretical or something that you can read on your own. We're still doing HTML language, and as we learn more, you would see why it is more significant. But it is not something that you have to, it's not, like the 8 of these reasons that you have to actually learn by heart. It's just for your understanding, because this might be a question. Okay. What is the significance? So if you can read through it, you can find it in the book also, but that's more like a reminder. And this slide is just meant for you to know that this could be important for the exam. Okay. Now, this is even more interesting, I think, with whatever we have learned so far. The actual indexing in textual database of where, when the search engine starts to collect those pages, it sort of dissects it and organizes it to give it or to make it into the indexing system of those repositories. So for us to understand it better, we did a bit of a simulation of how it actually happens without getting into the intricacies of how the algorithmic process is going to be run. On top of those pages, we will look at the outcome of how the indexing is able to dissect it. So that's what we are going to learn, because Google obviously is not written any book on the subject of how it does indexing, but through the results or based on our little bit of knowledge um, on the outcome of the process that is returning those pages to us and how the matching is done, we are able to somewhat come close to the simulation of the process itself. So that's what we are going to talk about with the subsequent slides now. Okay. So when the web crawlers, those spiders, they go, and those programs basically are doing their job by going to the domains, going to the domain sitemap, look at all the pages, collect those that are newer ones, or if the content is changed, it's just going to pick it up and bring it back. So while it's doing it, and bringing those pages back to its repository or its indexing, it is actually going to, even before indexing, or you could say that during indexing, simultaneously, it is going to start to extract information to organize it better by making it indexable in a more detailed way. Okay. So that's what we are going to look at. Now, this is a simulation, assuming that this is the page that it has collected, which has got a title right here and so on. It is just a snippet. But what it is doing with this simulation is that the first thing it will do is it will look at the title tag of that page. It will extract the information of the title, because that's going to be the primary or the first information, meaning that what the site is about, what the page is about, that's what is being collected first and separated as having the highest weightage or significance and relevance for matching your keywords. So heading is the first thing it's going to extract and start to organize it. Then it is going to look at the meta description. Remember the description tag that is bringing the description information for snippets. Then it is also going to look at the keywords. Now, keywords is something which otherwise you could say that it is a hidden piece of info, and that information itself is relevant for reading those web pages for indexing purposes for those search engines. It is not going to be displayed, or these keywords are not shown as keywords on the pages that you see as users. So remember that. Now that keywords is also the information that indexing is going to collect it is also going to summarize for that page certain numbers or the way these are described, like total words on the page. So 1,739. By the way, these are just tabulations or collection of, or it is more like a summary at the meta level. So this information has got a relevance to the search engine. That is why it's there. And through our own due diligence, we know that this is exactly the type of collection of data that is done at the time of indexing. So for instance, if it is 1,739 pages, the Google is able to determine if the page has got about enough number of words that it could hold or consider to have to be acceptable as the volume of information on the page. For instance, if let's say you see, if you are a programmer or someone who is uploading the content, you can create one HTML page that could be as long as like 50 pages, or it could be the entire book on one long HTML page. But and the words are going to be far too many. Search engine or the Google has got certain limitations it would not allow. So it is going to check for all those words to see the volume or the length of the content. And therefore, it could be one thing that Google is interested in matching with, and there could be others also. So total number of pages, words that have links on the pages, words that have no links to the pages, without worrying about what is the significance of it. Just think of it as tabulation of information at a meta level. That's about it. Number of external links, distinct words, number of links on the pages. This is FYI for your information. There is no question in the exam that would ask you to explain what this means. However, I will give you a little bit of a clue of what are the different types of links and what could be their relevance, but we'll do it in a more concise and not go as detailed. Second, components. Now, the second thing that the search would do for that page is it's going to extract all the textual content, like everything textual is collected without regards to the headings, without regards to the subheadings or anything else in the meta tags or non-meta tags. Whatever the content might be is pulled and it is shown as excerpt or a small portion of it with the few number of fonts that are in different color, and there are other wordings that are underlined. So we will just try to explain it why we have done it this way. So let's assume that this is the text that is collected. First thing, the search engine is going to mark certain words in red fonts, for instance, that would be considered as non-significant, or we call them stop words, words that search engine wouldn't like to account for or think of as having relevance or a weightage given to it with their combinations with words in other combinations. And at the same time, these are not nouns, or these are not the kind of words that are frequently considered to be having enough relevance to give meaning or give or be able to to have a complete meaning. Let's say it is incomplete meaning, or it is adverbs or adjectives and so on. So for instance, becoming of, for instance, is considered stop word. Me, me, in, the, for, you, a, all these in red colors, they're considered stop words. So unless you put them within quotation marks as a sentence or as a longer set of words, it's not going to have that enforcement to be understood or to be matched as one long search term. In essence, if you write free text without using any, without putting them within quotation marks, we haven't come to the quotation marks yet. But I'm just being specific about stop words, for which you don't have to uh, think of it as an enforced words. You can think of it as a choice for the search engine. And the choice is that the search at the time when you put these or use these words is not going to have relevance for the search for meaning. Therefore, red stop words, and there is a huge list of stop words. I mean, these are just some that can be marked or are easy to understand. But what are the other words? Now, let's look at the ones that are underlined. Now, ones that are underlined is another set or sequence of words or have a certain value to the search only because together they would have a different meaning or they can be combined in different ways. For example, let's say board members, management team, volunteer. So board members could be two words that the search might think as having meaning together. The board members and management usually don't come together, and therefore the search would think of it as if it is separate from the board members, where management team could be frequently considered as together because a lot of times people use it for the way in which they would express it as more frequently used together terms, and not members management or board team is not usually used together. So these can be combined together or they can be used separate from each other. However, they would not have as much of a significance for the search to consider as being written one next to another to give it a longer or make it into a longer sentence, only because with their combination they would have give a meaning which can also mean that they would be combined in different ways, meaning that management and let's say management opportunities can be matched also. So there is no sequence that can be maintained, meaning that if the word management and opportunities together is not considered to have a meaning, or where the word management can be separate word. In both instances, it would have the leverage to either combine it or consider it separate yet is present in the same content page. So combination or not, just the presence of these words in the content page would be sufficient to bring this page. And that's why they are underlined. But now, if you look at some of the words that are not underlined, you could see that they have a relevance for the search as combinations only because they are together. For instance, email address can be considered as having having a meaning on its own. The word account would have a meaning on its own. Forgot your password is no, not this one, sorry. um, Verification, for instance, password as a single word. These would have a relevance, not necessarily in combination with other words. So they are separated. So it is a soup, a mix of things, a mix of words that the search engine, using its own semantics or its own intelligence, would have given it a kind of or separated it or given it um, a relevance only because it is programmed as such, or mechanically it is supposed to be working in a way that it is able to separate these type of words. So just to get you into the idea of knowing the words or their combinations together or without, or certain words that are not as relevant versus others that are more relevant, that's how it is going to index the page. Therefore, just the content itself at the time of indexing is not the idea that search engine is going to be confined to consider it as one I guess as 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 um, as a single document, but rather the document would have the components now, and they are separated according to how the simulation is looking at with what you saw just now. So this is at the time of indexing. Then there comes another portion. Now this is happening in the milliseconds or in a lightning speed. And you know, So it is incredible how individual pages, the speed at which these pages are being collected, and simultaneously everything like you're seeing is happening for each page. We're just talking about one page. Now, for the same page, when we did more of a simulation to go to the next step, we saw that the tags, like remember H1, H2, H3 tags, which stands where H1 stands for the main caption and H2 is the sub um, headings. All these are separated because these tags have relevance for the search at the time of indexing. Uh, Relevance can have a different meaning depending on how you've used this term, but here specifically relevance in the sense of giving it more significance for matching your words on priority. Meaning that before going to the paragraphs and the detailed text, it would say that let's look at these captions or these headings first, and then look in the paragraph. So there is this prioritization as well, but it is all happening at the same time. So, the entire process is a one go. Then the next thing it is going to do is going to look for the relevance of the page, because, the relevance is also important for bringing that result in priority in the first page or in what sequence it's going to be presented as snippet. And in order for it to do that ranking, it does something called word density, which means that it is another type of analysis that looks at the frequency of certain words used on the same page. For instance, for now, as much as we know, the Google is looking for how many times a certain word is appearing on that page, whereas the priority or the sequence in which it is described will depend on the number of instances of this word appearing on that page. If it is a single word, so research, it is appeared 35 times. So it is showing that research is what is most commonly used and it is more frequent. Um, I guess, having more relevance in that sense. Then it will also look at combination of words where the two words together are used more often. And it goes to about 3 words. And now I've heard that they are now doing 4 words as well. So for up till we did our own simulation, we found that it is also looking at the combination of 3 words and the frequency in which it is occurring on that page. So 3 words, internet research specialist, for instance, a count is 3. 2 words, internet research count is 10. And so the sequence is shown with the hierarchy of what is more having more density or more occurrences. And so it continues. Now, then there is a concept of linked word versus non-linked word. Linked word means that with the words that are 1 or 2 combinations, are they linked internally within the pages that are attached to the same domain, or they are non-linked, which means that they don't take someone to the next page, or it is not navigational words. So it has, again, a relevance of the sense, since we are just looking at the simulation part, our interest is just to get an overall understanding of indexing, of how the indexing is so detailed that those pieces of information are kept ready for anyone who's doing the search as a user to be able to use it, and for the search engine's internal use to give it a relevance or the ranking. So for whatever purposes it is dissected or given this sort of a granular detailed account of indexes, it is definitely of relevance internally and externally for the user as well. And then, anytime we feel that we want to look at the relevance of the links that are present on those pages, it is very important to also get the concept of at least one aspect of why the in URL, the type of operator we talked about, I told you, which is going to query specifically the words inside of the URL. that has a relevance is because all these links that I'm showing you right now, which is actually the real links that are extracted from the page, when you look at the HTML tag, you would see that there are so many more links that are there, which could be navigations internally for internal pages as well as external links. But it has a relevance for the search engine to understand that if those links exist on those pages, whether those are attached to certain words or they are the words which are navigating inside or outside of that domain. And therefore, those words that are linked to it, for example, just take anyone. For example, airsassociation.org. By the way, airsassociation.org, this domain we don't have anymore. It's a kind of an older version. It's supposed to be AOFIRS.org. So anyway, for the sake of explaining, assuming that this is the link, and the link has the words next to it, which says board members ears. Now, this is the title of the page. Now, this title with these three words are attached to or have relevance to take someone to a page called board members ears. So this relationship also has a meaning for the search. If you are doing in URL board directors, it would take you to this page. And one of the reasons why certain relationships are created or anything that is relational to one information like URL versus title text versus link text, they are tied together or they are considered to be part of the information, which has got three components, for instance, this one, and this one, which is link text, title text, and URL, for instance. All three together are to be assumed to have a meaning for the search engine to find out if anyone is doing what we call stuffing of keywords. Like it has a way of finding out if someone, for the sake of SEO or for the sake of marketing or giving more relevance to the page, is created or stuffed certain keywords which are not linked to each other, or the topic or the description or the details of it are not actually matching with each other. So let me give you another example. Take H1 tag, for instance, for the caption, for the main heading. Now, under that main heading, there could be a paragraph or a number of lines for the more detailed text that is there. In that P tag, the information will be matched with the H1 tag or the words inside of the H1 tag to find out if someone has actually used H1 information by stuffing certain keywords, which otherwise, if you compare it or you relate it to the P tag, does not contain the same information related to that title. So it would know that somebody is doing keyword stuffing for SEO reasons. So there are these internal reasons, and then there are the other reasons of making it convenient for matching your search terms or bringing more relevant results back to you. So these are the two reasons. But like I said, so relationship has got this other angle to it, which is preventing the stuffing of words. Anyway, so then there are links which we call internal links and external links. Internal links are the ones which are tied up to the same domain, so it takes you to the pages inside of the website. But then supposing you have a page, now I'm going to relate this information with the ranking or the relevance for the pages to appear in a higher sequence or in a more priority of presenting snippets on the SERP pages. Now, with the ranking theorem, the important thing is that for the search to know how many of the links on that particular page are external links, or whether those links on the pages, there are more of external links on the pages or there are internal links. If more links are external links, because sometimes external links are used to bring or present or somehow display information of other websites on that particular page. Other times it is more like advertisements or something that is breaking out of that domain and taking you outside somewhere, for could be for marketing, for funnel marketing, whatever reason it might be. But what it does is that it degrades the relevance of that page or takes away the priority by giving it a negative ranking when you have a lot many external links on this page. So this could be the one of the relevances of figuring out how many of the internal and external links are there. Okay. Right. So I think this is, and these are external links. It's coming from the same web page. So none of what you're seeing that is displayed on these slides is actually self-created. It is extracted from the real websites, and that's why it is, sort of so many of that information sets that is being displayed. All right. So nothing is now. The last thing I would say before we conclude, there is a site map. We call it site map because it is navigational information that gives a direction to the robots or the crawlers that come onto that website. It tells them how many pages are there, what are the titles of those pages. So basically, it's a map of all pages that are attached or linked to that particular domain, that specific website. So this is a site map that generally is it can be navigated to from the footer, or where the footer of the page is. You could see that there is something called site map. You click on it and it will display all those pages that are linked pages to that domain. So the search engine would also use or utilize this information as the navigation for the spiders or the for crawlers to go in and make sure that they attend to all these pages. So I think this should be sufficient information and about enough information for today, and a lot for you to absorb. You can actually, since it's a weekend, perhaps you may want to look at, let me see what the chapter number is, so that if you get a chance, you may want to revise it. There is also a recording that's going to come up online. I would actually place it in your Dropbox, but it takes about 24 hours, only because it gets edited and it's a heavy file for uploading. And because of that reason, there is a time delay. So whatever we get finished today, it is actually recorded and then it goes to the editors or company that we subscribe to. And they download it, they edit, few things. I don't know if there's much to edit, but at least a break that they're going to take off and then upload it. So 24 hours is what would be the timeline. Uh, Hopefully, it should be available. So if any one of you has missed the lecture, I know Christian has missed it, and he told me because of the time zone. There's another gentleman from China. He's having the same problem, time difference. So for them, when they're listening to this message, they would know that it is going to be a time delay. So I hope to see you all on Monday. And if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to ask, or you can even email me. I believe you have my email address. And I'll see you on Monday, exact same time. And thank you very much for attending the lecture. If you have a question, anything that I can answer, please go ahead. Yeah, thank you, Laurie. You also, everyone, Hannah, Tristan, Brad, everyone, wish you a great weekend. See you on Monday. All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye for now.